We usually think of the conversion of Europe as this story of conquest, right? But what if I told you it was really more like a secret marketing campaign? Yeah, a strategy so clever and so successful that it didn't just win over a continent. It actually reshaped a global faith from the inside out.
So, really, how did the pagan, world-loving tribes of Northern Europe become Christian? The picture we all have in our heads is one of fire and sword, of old ways being totally stamped out. But the real story? It's way more subtle and honestly a whole lot more fascinating. It wasn't about conquest at all. It was about a brilliant, and for the time, a pretty radical compromise that literally changed everything.
Okay, so to get this compromise, we first have to understand the two groups that were, well, clashing. We're talking about two completely different ways of seeing the world. Let's break it down. Now, what's so interesting here is just how disconnected these two worldviews were. On one side, you have Christian missionaries, and they're essentially selling a product, eternal salvation in the next life. But the Germanic peoples, they weren't really in the market for that. They needed results right here, right now, victory in battle, healthy kids, a good harvest. It was, a classic case of product-market mismatch.
And this Germanic outlook, it has a name. It's called a magico-religious worldview. Think of it this way. If the weather app on your phone was wrong all the time, what would you do? You delete it and get one that actually works, right? Well, for the Germanic peoples, their religion had to be just as practical. A god that couldn't deliver real, tangible benefits just wasn't worth worshiping. Simple as that.
So how in the world do you bridge that gap? You've got a faith focused on the next life and a culture that's demanding results in this one. Well, the solution came from the very, very top, from a pope with a plan that was, frankly, radical.
And the proof, the actual smoking gun for this whole strategy, is right here. It's in a single letter from Pope Gregory the Great. In this one document, it would basically become the blueprint for the next 1,000 years of European history.
So what was this master plan? Well, the core of it was completely counterintuitive. It wasn't about tearing down the old world. No, it was all about adapting it.
Just listen to this. This is an instruction he sent to a missionary out in Britain. He says, "The temples of the idols in those parts should on no account be destroyed." I mean, can you imagine being that missionary? You've traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles to stamp out paganism, and your boss, the Pope, tells you, hey, leave their temple standing. It must have been absolutely mind-blowing. But why?
Because here comes the brilliant part, the pivot. Don't destroy them, repurpose them, cleanse them, and then rededicate them to the Christian God. It's just a masterclass in strategy, really. You turn a symbol of the old faith into a symbol of the new one. And this wasn't just some vague idea. No, Gregory laid it out in a clear 4-step plan. It's almost like a psychological operation. First, keep the temples. Why? Because you meet people where they're comfortable on familiar ground. Second, you cleanse them with holy water. That's a really powerful symbolic break with the past. Third, swap out the pagan idols with Christian relics. You're basically swapping out the old software for the new. And fourth, and this is the really genius part, you adapt their rituals. You don't take away their big parties and feasts, you just rebrand them.
So, you see what's happening, right? The key here is gradual change. You let people keep their sacred places, you let them keep their traditions, but you very slowly and very surely change the meaning from the inside out. You could almost call it a friendly takeover.
So what happens when you roll out a strategy like this? What's the result? Well, it didn't just create converts, it actually created an entirely new kind of Christianity.
What you get is this hybrid faith, something we now call folk Christianity. In this new world, Christian saints were often treated just like the old gods, as these powerful patrons who could protect you. So instead of praying to some pagan god for a good harvest, you might now pray to, say, Saint Isidore the farmer. The need was exactly the same, just the name on the door had changed. And this magical religious style of Christianity, it became the dominant faith for centuries. Which brings us to our final and maybe our most important point. This whole process didn't just change the people who were converting, it fundamentally changed the religion itself. Here is a perfect example that shows just how deep this change went. Let's take the old Germanic word hail. Originally, that word meant things like communal well-being, political success, victory in battle, all very real-world, this-worldly stuff. But as Christianity adopted the term, its meaning got completely rewired. It came to mean holiness and the eternal salvation of the individual soul. See that? The word is the same, but the entire worldview behind it has been transformed.
So when you boil it all down, what we're really looking at isn't a simple story of conversion. It was a two-way street. While the Germanic peoples were being Christianized, Christianity itself was being Germanized. And this process, this fusion, didn't just create medieval Europe, it laid the very foundations of the modern Western world.
And all of that leaves us with one last kind of provocative thought. Take a look at your own life, your own traditions and holidays. How many of them are really just a compromise with a past that we've all forgotten? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What ancient ghosts are still hiding in plain sight?